I'm Matthew. Ever since I was a kid, I knew my mom was a femme fatale, and I was the offspring of such a woman. My mom used her wiles to get rid of the first wife and managed to rise from being the mistress to the legitimate wife. The day we went to the Hua family, my mom stroked my face. She smiled and warned, "Matthew, you'd better be good and do as you're told. If you don't." My mom leaned over my shoulder, her voice cold as ice, and said slowly, word by word, "I'll throw you away." I've known since I was little that my mom has no heart. She doesn't love anyone but herself. My birth was an accident, and my existence is a mistake. If I can't be useful to my mom, I'll be cast aside soon. To avoid being abandoned, I have to desperately complete the tasks my mom gives me. The new task is to seduce Samuel's only son, Oliver, the young master of the Hua family. He's also my stepbrother. The day I first met Oliver, I was standing in the living room with a bundle, looking like a scruffy stray dog, and Oliver was standing on the stairs, looking down at me. In the dim light, the young man had a cold and distant look, his features as delicate and beautiful as a painting. But when he saw me, he suddenly burst out laughing. He sneered, "Where did this stray dog come from? How dare it enter the Hua family's door?" I blinked. I thought to myself, this little master, born with a silver spoon in his mouth, seems to dislike me a lot. But the more challenging a task is, the more fun it is to complete. I licked my lower lip, and a sick excitement welled up in my eyes. After that day, I started trying to tame this arrogant and troublesome little master. Oliver was venomous-tongued, arrogant, and extremely guarded. He regarded me, who had sneaked into the Hua family with my mom, as the culprit who was ruining his family, and then launched a prank campaign against me that lasted for half a year. He put mice in my shoes, poured cold water on my head in -10°C weather, and taunted me with the most vicious words. But I didn't care, because I knew that the more precious the prey, the more patience it took to capture. And I've always been a very patient hunter. Half a year later, I finally waited for the opportunity to close the net. It's ridiculous to say, the arrogant little master of the Hua family had claustrophobia. On that cold winter day, Samuel took us skiing. Unexpectedly, on the way, an accident happened. Not only did Oliver and I get lost, but we were also trapped in a cave by a snowstorm. That night, the always noble and arrogant little master tightly held my hand, and his cold and pleasant voice was faintly trembling. He asked me, "Matthew, are we going to die here?" I thought to myself, of course not, because I deliberately planned this accident. But I couldn't say it directly. If I did, how could my sensitive and suspicious little prey take the bait? I didn't say anything. I just lowered my eyes and silently squeezed Oliver's hand. Then I softly comforted him. "Don't be afraid. You'll be okay." Oliver indeed didn't get hurt, because before the cave collapsed due to the snow, I risked my life to send him out, and I myself was buried under the ruins and fell into a coma for 3 whole months. I didn't die. However, due to that avalanche, I got a chronic cold-related illness that can't be cured. But I don't regret it, because that small sacrifice successfully helped me capture the prey I'd been eyeing for a long time, body and soul. After that day, Oliver started to stick to me. The young master lost his mother at an early age and was sensitive and suspicious. And Samuel was busy with work and rarely accompanied Oliver. Now my appearance just filled the emotional void in Oliver's heart. He firmly believed that I loved him. Therefore, Oliver unreservedly poured all his love on me. But I knew it wasn't enough. I didn't just want Oliver's love. I also wanted him to be infatuated with me, depend on me, and crave me like an addiction. I wanted everything about Oliver. Even though I'm also a man, I seduced Oliver one afternoon in the middle of summer. I was over the moon that day, because I truly had Oliver completely, from head to toe, from soul to body. The young master of the Hua family was unruly and flamboyant, but at night he would hold my waist, pestering me to play with him. He called me Matthew and begged me to love him. His tone was extremely humble, just like a puppy begging its master for affection. I laughed. At this moment, the cold and noble young master had become a tamed puppy loyal only to me, but I was destined not to be a good master. I abandoned Oliver. That night, my mom found me. She held a cigarette between her slender fingers, her tone cold and distant. My mom told me to ruin Oliver, because she was pregnant with a boy, and she wanted her child to inherit the Hua family. I said that was out of the question. The corner of my mom's mouth twitched slightly, sizing me up with a half smile. She asked, "What, you've fallen for real?" I shook my head and said, "Not really, it's just, Oliver is different from others. He's cold and aloof, decadent and dissipated. He's high and mighty, yet fragile and sensitive. He's the puppy I raised with my own hands. So, I need more money." After hearing what I said, my mom burst out laughing, covering her mouth. My mom said I really lived up to being her son, and she also said that we too had the same blood flowing in our bodies, equally cold-hearted and unfeeling. I said modestly, "You flatter me. I'm not as good as you, Mom." My mom didn't decline. She put out the cigarette between her fingers and asked me lazily what exactly I wanted. I thought for a while and said I wanted money, a whole lot of money, and a clean identity away from my mom. My mom was a bit surprised. "Is that all you want?" I nodded desperately, afraid my mom would go back on her word. My mom sneered and commented contemptuously, "What you want is really cheap." I thought, yeah, it does seem a bit cheap. I sold the puppy that adored me so much at a dirt cheap price. One night when it was pouring cats and dogs, I left the Hua family without a word. The day after I left, Oliver called me many times. There were 99 plus missed calls and countless unread messages. The puppy seemed to go crazy, searching for me non-stop, but I was doomed to be a bad owner. The day I got off the train, I canceled the phone card that had been with me for 8 years. When I abandoned the puppy, I also completely bid farewell to the past that I'd rather forget. 10 years later, at University A, I was no longer Matthew, the bastard son of a slut from the narrow alleyways. I was Professor Matthew from University A. I had a brand new life, a brand new resume, and a brand new everything. If nothing unexpected happened, I would live my life in peace and quiet. But at a certain celebration banquet, I saw Oliver again, the puppy I had abandoned years ago. The boy had grown up. At the banquet, with glasses clinking, the man was dressed in a pitch-black suit, just like the first time I saw him. His features were cold, aloof, and distant. He seemed to be my puppy, yet also seemed not to be. Noticing my unease, a friend beside me thought I was scared, so he patiently introduced Oliver's identity to me. He said Oliver was the only son of the Hua family and also the new head of the Hua family. He's young, but he's really decisive and tough. He's got all the directors of the Hua family eating out of his hand. My heart skipped a beat. The only son, looks like my mom, that old fox, finally got tripped up in a small matter. Not only did she fail to bring down Oliver, but she also lost the baby in her womb. I chickened out. I dared to scheme against the innocent young master 10 years ago, but I don't have the guts to offend Mr. Oliver, who holds great power now. At the banquet, I was on edge. I was holding a wine glass, but I was too scared to take a sip, worried that Oliver would recognize me as the jerk who dumped him. Fortunately, until the end of the banquet, Oliver didn't even glance my way. I let out a sigh of relief. Come to think of it, I've changed so much over the years. From my appearance to my build, from my hairstyle to my voice. It's quite normal that Oliver didn't recognize me. Maybe he's already forgotten about me? Half an hour later, the celebration banquet ended. The big stone that had been weighing on my heart finally dropped, and I grabbed my bag, ready to make a run for it. But right as I was about to leave, I felt a chill on my chest. A clumsy waiter spilled all the pastries on the tray onto me. The thick white cream and the moist cake blended together. Looking at my newly bought suit, completely ruined, I wasn't in a good mood at all. But the waiter was a young girl. Seeing the girl's red-rimmed eyes as she kept apologizing to me, I finally softened my heart. I waved my hand, declined the waiter's offer to compensate, then turned around and headed to the bathroom. As I lowered my head to clean the stains on my clothes, the scent of ebony and agarwood wafted into my nostrils. This fragrance was far too familiar. I was startled, instinctively wanting to run away, but then my wrist was grabbed, and I was pressed against the mirror with a hand on my waist. The mottled mirror reflected a long, cold white hand on my waist. A man pressed close to my ear, his eyes sickly and obsessive, whispering hoarsely, "Brother, long time no see." I was stunned. After 10 years, I saw Oliver again, but at this moment, I no longer had the calm and composed manner I had back then. My mind went blank. When my thoughts seemed to float into outer space, I felt a tickle on my waist. Oliver was pinching my waist. He chuckled in my ear and asked, "Brother, are you shaking?" The man's tall body pressed against mine, bringing an invisible sense of oppression. In a daze, I thought of the past. It seemed to be the same way back then in the Hua family. The cold and noble young master was clingy and afraid of the dark. At night, he would secretly climb into my bed, pestering me to hold him. Unfortunately, times had changed. The Oliver now was no longer the Oliver of the past. Given Oliver's personality, if he knew that everything back then was my deliberate plan, he'd probably get someone to kill me. I quietly put some distance between Oliver and me and pretended to be calm, saying, "You've got the wrong person. I'm an only child. I don't have a younger brother." Oliver raised his eyebrows slightly, with a half smile, and said, "Oh, really?" Just as I was about to nod, Oliver suddenly leaned in closer. His thin lips were close to my earlobe, and his voice was slightly hoarse, as if he was tipsy. "If you don't have a younger brother, then does Mr. Lou have a boyfriend? If you do, would you mind having one more brother?" The voice by my ear was playful and teasing, bordering on flirting. My ears turned bright red, and I forced myself to say, "Mr. Oliver, please behave yourself." As soon as I finished speaking, a soft laugh sounded by my ear. Oliver looked at me mockingly, as if he had heard something extremely ridiculous. "Brother." Under the light, the man's affectionate and amorous eyes were fixed on me. He said slowly, word by word, "You never thought about respect when you were seducing me back then." I froze, feeling as if a basin of cold water had been poured over me from head to toe, and even my spine was chilled. "What are you talking about?" But even in such a situation, I still tried my best to maintain the last bit of dignity. I insisted, "I don't know you at all. Mr. Oliver, you're really drunk. You're talking nonsense." With that, I bypassed Oliver. As I was about to go outside to find a waiter, Oliver stopped me. "Brother." Oliver took out his phone and placed it in front of me. He said softly, "Look at what this is." I didn't want to get entangled with Oliver, but my pupils shrank when I saw the screen clearly. What was shown on the screen was a photo of a woman. The woman's face was pale, and her hair was messy. She was wearing the blue and white striped hospital gown of a mental hospital, sitting on a chair with a blank look on her face. The woman had become so emaciated that she was almost unrecognizable, but I still recognized who she was at a glance. She was my biological mother, the crazy woman who had tormented me for over a decade. I could hardly believe that the person in the photo was my mom. My mom was a self-centered and cold-blooded person. Since I could remember, my mom had always been invincible. This was the first time I'd seen my mom in such a sorry state. A chill ran down my spine. While I was frozen in place, Oliver moved closer again. Oliver whispered in my ear, "Brother, Auntie has told me everything." He closed his phone and continued, "If you don't want others to know about your past, just come home with me obediently." At his words, my face turned deathly pale. All the beautiful things, as illusory as bubbles, were burst by a single sentence from Oliver, and memories of the past came flooding back to me. Back then, I wasn't called Matthew. I was called a bastard and lived like a rat in the dark and filthy red light district. I was selfish and despicable. I can't even remember all the underhanded things I did just to survive. If all this were to be known by others, then everything I've painstakingly built up would be completely destroyed. So I grabbed Oliver's sleeve and pleaded with a trembling voice, "Please, don't tell anyone about those things." I lost my composure. When I came to my senses, warm liquid was streaming down from the corners of my eyes. Oliver lowered his eyes, then leaned down and placed a kiss on the corner of my eye. He said, "Brother, don't cry. If you cry, my heart will ache." As he spoke, Oliver's eyes were full of tenderness. It was as if he was still the Oliver from 10 years ago, that puppy, like boy who had eyes only for me. But I knew that Oliver had long changed. He was no longer the innocent and gullible young master from 10 years ago. I was the one who destroyed everything with my own hands. After that day, I was taken away by Oliver, but he didn't take me back to the Hua family. Instead, he blindfolded me and took me to a completely unfamiliar place. It was an isolated island, and on the island stood a villa. Inside, the furniture was complete, and there were a large number of game cartridges and CDs. But there was no signal or internet. The villa was like a gilded cage, and I was the canary locked inside. When I first arrived at the villa, I was terrified. I thought Oliver would kill me, or maybe torture me and turn me into a wreck like my mom. But that didn't happen. Oliver didn't do anything. He just clung to me, pestered me, just like he did when I was still in the Hua family 10 years ago. It was as if I hadn't abandoned him, and he hadn't imprisoned me. But some things were different from 10 years ago. When I was in the Hua family 10 years ago, Oliver was also clingy, but not like this. Back then, I could go to school freely and come and go from home as I pleased. Even if I came back a little late occasionally, Oliver would just grumble a bit. But now it was different. One night, I went out for a walk to relax. There were no other people on the island, but the island was large. Oliver wouldn't let me leave, but he allowed me to move around on the island. There were shooting stars in the sky that day. I thought it was interesting, so I sat outside for a while longer. It was just a short while, no more than half an hour in total. But when I got back to the villa, I saw Oliver staggering towards me, his eyes red. He asked, "Where did you just go? Are you trying to leave me again?" That night, Oliver held me tightly. It was as if he wished he could crush me into his very bones and blood, devour me whole. And that night, Oliver was like a puppy afraid that its treasure would be stolen, frantically leaving his scent and marks. This went on until dawn. The next day, I learned a new term, abandoned dog syndrome. A dog that's been abandoned once will become extremely obedient when it returns to its owner, sticking to the owner like glue, terrified of being deserted again. Just like Oliver now. Oliver toppled my mom, toppled Samuel, and smoothly inherited the Hua family. The Hua family's businesses span the globe. Logically speaking, as the person in charge, Oliver should be swamped with work, but that wasn't the case. Since we met, Oliver spent most of his time at the villa, in the room where I was. Moreover, Oliver developed a rather bad habit. He treated me like a comfort doll. He'd hold me while reading documents, hold me while watching TV. Even when eating, he'd feed me himself. Oliver was like a patient suffering from skin hunger, craving me all the time. Perhaps because I inherited my mom's cold-blooded genes, I didn't like such intimate touches. But every time I tried to struggle, Oliver's hand on my waist would tighten. Then he'd stare at me with pleading eyes and hoarsely plead, "Brother, please, don't abandon me." As he spoke, the corners of Oliver's eyes turned red, really looking like a pitiful little puppy. I sighed. Out of a moment's soft-heartedness, I let Oliver continue his antics. I don't like men. At least, that's what I thought of myself. 10 years ago, I seduced Oliver only because of my mother's order. Setting aside the order, I'm actually as cold-blooded and selfish as my mother. I don't love men, nor do I love women. In the 10 years since I separated from Oliver, I've never had a relationship with anyone else. I've always been wearing a mask of being gentle and harmless, acting as the good-tempered Professor James that others talk about. This isn't because I like it, but out of an obsession. I want to live in the sunlight. I want to be a normal person. I want to be like everyone else, getting married, having kids, being busy with work until I die. But Oliver's appearance shattered everything. I became Oliver's captive. To be fair, Oliver isn't bad to me. In the villa, I have everything except freedom, expensive jewels, the latest entertainment facilities, and a menu specially prepared by a 5-star chef. I was pampered for half a year, but this isn't the life I want. During those 6 months of being trapped, I was in a daze all day long. I almost lost my self-care ability and became Oliver's pet. I did think about escaping, but Oliver kept a tight rein on me. Even without surveillance cameras, he could act like one, watching over me every moment and not allowing me to be out of his sight for even a second. Oliver was overly obsessive, so paranoid that I once thought Oliver would keep me trapped like this until I died. But on the first anniversary of my being trapped, something unexpected happened. Late at night, Oliver put his arm around my waist. He hugged me tightly from behind, rested his chin on my shoulder, and whispered in my ear, "Brother, I'm leaving." I was half asleep, and thought I had misheard. After all, Oliver had always been clingy to me, to an almost pathological extent. Just when I was almost accepting the fate of being imprisoned by Oliver for life, he suddenly told me he was leaving. I felt strange, but I didn't say anything. I just turned my back to Oliver silently. That night, Oliver, who usually liked to chatter to me before going to sleep, was uncharacteristically quiet. Oliver didn't say why he was leaving. He just said there were things to deal with at the company, that he had to be away for a while and would be back soon. I blurted out, "How soon is right away?" Oliver didn't answer. He just hugged me and said softly, "I'm sorry." Actually, there was nothing to be sorry about. After all, I don't like men. In my imagination, I should have been happy to see Oliver leave, but that wasn't the case. The next day, I opened my eyes, still drowsy. Almost instinctively, I turned to hug the slender waist of the man beside me, but suddenly found nothing there. The space beside me was empty, and then I belatedly remembered. Oliver had already left. I thought I'd be glad Oliver was gone, but the truth was, after Oliver left, I was completely lost for a whole month. I just sat in the room day after day like a puppet. I almost forgot about time, about sleep, about everything. If it weren't for the cook who called me for meals on time every day, I might even forget about hunger. Oliver said he'd be back soon, but I waited and waited. I stayed alone on the island for a whole year, yet I didn't get any news of Oliver's return. I was going crazy. I used to think I didn't care about Oliver, but the truth was I was attached to Oliver, just as Oliver was attached to me. On the 375th day after Oliver left, I stopped the cook who was bringing me food. The rules on this island are very strict. The most serious one is that no one except Oliver is allowed to talk to me. That included the cook. If anyone broke this rule on their own, although Oliver wouldn't lay a hand on me, he'd go crazy and find ways to torment me in other ways. After a long time, I got scared. Even if Oliver didn't say anything, I'd follow the rules consciously. But maybe it was because I'd been alone for so long. I couldn't care less about those rules anymore. I stopped the cook who was about to leave and asked, "Where on earth is Oliver?" The cook looked at me and didn't say a word. After a long while, he finally said, "Sorry, I can't answer that." The cook paused, then added, "But Mr. Oliver said that if he doesn't come back within a year, you can leave at any time." With that, the cook handed me 2 keys. One was the key to the island's gate, and the other was the key to the yacht that could take me off the island. I took the keys, my mind in a turmoil. If I'd received these keys 2 years ago, when I just arrived at the villa, I'd have run away in a heartbeat. But now, absurdly, I didn't want to leave. Did Oliver not want me anymore? Did Oliver abandon me? I stood there, lost and dazed, my expression vacant. This time, those 4 words came to my mind again. The abandoned dog effect. Only this time, the tables had turned. After I'd abandoned Oliver twice, he'd abandoned me once in return. Is this karma? I thought to myself. Logically speaking, I should leave. After all, Oliver doesn't want me anymore. All I need to do is open the island's gate, get on the yacht, and I can leave this godforsaken place. But I didn't leave. I was like someone possessed, staying crouched in the house all the time, like a patient with Stockholm Syndrome, waiting for the person who imprisoned me to come back. While waiting, I thought about the past again, about the days when I was in the narrow alleyways. If Oliver was a little master born with a silver spoon in his mouth, then I was a sewer rat. I was born in the red light district, the most degenerate and chaotic place in Jiang City. And my mom was the most well-known woman there. She was a village girl from the mountains, but she was desperately longing for the prosperity of the city. So my mom came to Jiang City alone to make a living. My mom craved fame and fortune, and she wanted money. But my mom had no education and was rather empty-headed. After being cheated out of the little savings she had left by a man, she set her sights on the red light district. My mom started to degenerate and indulge herself. She shuttled among several men, constantly being the mistress of wealthy men, just to seek money and pleasure. And in the process, she accidentally got pregnant with me. My birth was an accident. Since my mom didn't know which client's child I was, she initially wanted to abort me. But when she went to the hospital, the doctor said her uterine wall was thin. If she had an abortion without permission, there was a high chance she'd never be able to conceive again. That's why my mom kept me, because she still needed her uterus to use a child to get more money. As for me, a child with an unknown father, my mom didn't care about me. In fact, for a long time, my mom didn't even give me a name. She called me a bastard and, like ordering a servant, made me wait on her and her successive lovers. In this small, materialistic alleyway, the repressed evil of humanity burst out. The men who came for pleasure didn't just like women. Occasionally, they'd also try something new with men. I looked extremely similar to my mom, and because I was young, I looked androgynous. Because of my good looks, the men who came to see my mom often took advantage of me, leering at me with lustful eyes. My mom never stopped them. After the men left, she'd just twist my ear and curse me, saying I was a vixen, even seducing my own mother's men. I gradually became numb. Just when I thought I'd rot away in this small alley, a turning point suddenly came. One of my mom's lovers was a down-and-out old wealthy man. After the man died, my mom took his belongings and went to his family, saying without batting an eye that she was the old man's granddaughter. That family believed her. Maybe they just couldn't be bothered, but that family accepted my mom. My mom was still poor, but she now had a decent identity. Using this fake identity, my mom got to know Samuel, toppled the legitimate wife, and managed to take her place. And she took me to the Hua family not to let me enjoy a good life, but to help her secure her power. My mom was getting old. She was no longer an 18-year-old girl. Even spending nearly $1 million on medical aesthetics every year couldn't stop her body from aging. But there were always new 18-year-old girls popping up. To keep Samuel in her grasp, my mom set her sights on me. First, she wanted me to seduce Samuel. But Samuel was an upright man and he didn't like kids. No matter how much I hinted, he only treated me as a younger generation. My mom, not willing to give up, then turned her attention to Oliver. As she got older, what my mom wanted was not just money, but also power. But with Oliver, the legitimate son, around, a child born to a mistress like my mom could never inherit the family business. So my mom came to me. She wanted me to seduce Oliver and ruin him, so as to completely eliminate his chance of inheriting the family business. The young master was arrogant and noble. He was like the light, having everything that I, who was as dark as someone from the sewer, couldn't reach. First, I hated Oliver. I was desperate to drag Oliver down and lead him to sink step by step, just to turn him into a messed up guy like me. But after actually getting Oliver, I started to waver. The young man's love was passionate and sincere. He would cling to me at night, asking for hugs. He would stay by my side for 3 days and 3 nights without eating or drinking when I had a fever. And when it rained, he was afraid I'd get wet, so he'd carry me through the puddles. That was the first time I'd ever been loved. Although I didn't want to admit it, I did have feelings for Oliver. These feelings made me terrified. I was attached to this love, but on the other hand, no one had ever taught me how to love. When humans face something unknown, their instinctive reaction is to dodge and run away. I was no exception. Coincidentally, my mom got pregnant at that time, so I took this opportunity to extort some money and completely distance myself from the Hua family, from the past, and from Oliver. During those 10 years of being away, I deliberately tried not to think about Oliver. As time passed, I thought I had long forgotten Oliver, but the moment I saw him again, the old memories and pent-up emotions came flooding back. That's when I realized that I did not love Oliver. I just didn't want to believe that I was someone worthy of being loved. But now, it seems too late to wake up. Oliver has already left. I lost the only person in this world who loved me. I had planned to muddle through my life on this island forever, but then I unexpectedly saw a familiar figure on the island. It was my mom. Unlike the photos Oliver showed me, my mom seemed to be in great mental condition. She was wearing a red suit, exuding a fierce aura. When she saw me, a flash of surprise crossed my mom's eyes. I never expected, "You're actually here." With that, my mom reached out her hand and said coldly, "Come with me." Looking at the outstretched hand, I instinctively took a step back. Almost subconsciously, I asked, Aren't you crazy?" Hearing me say this, my mom raised an eyebrow. She said mockingly, "Am I crazy? Is that what he told you about me?" I didn't answer, but my mom started muttering angrily, From my mom, I learned a completely different version of the story. My mom wasn't crazy, and my half-brother didn't die either. The year after I left the Hua family, Samuel passed away, and after Samuel's death, Oliver and my mom engaged in a 5-year-long battle for the family fortune. The one with the upper hand was Oliver. After all, he was the heir carefully groomed by his mother, well-versed in business matters. My mom was different. She was always hanging around the red light district, picking up all sorts of shady tricks. After realizing she couldn't beat Oliver fair and square, she got involved with the underworld, trafficking people and forcing decent folks into prostitution. My mom did make a fortune from these shady businesses, but she also left herself vulnerable. Oliver found a loophole and got my mom thrown in jail. After that, my mom faked being insane. She managed to slip through the legal cracks and, while out on bail, fled to the U.S. with the money. The U.S. is a chaotic place. There, my mom thrived. This time, she didn't just keep trafficking people. She also started dealing in guns and selling illegal drugs. My mom made a killing in the U.S. But she still had her eyes on the Hua family's fortune and wanted to use her youngest son to seize power. The two of them started fighting over the family property again, but it was a dead heat. Having said that, my mom looked up at me. With a half smile, she said, "Come to think of it, I really should thank you. If it weren't for you, Oliver wouldn't be dead." As soon as she said that, my mind went blank. I asked with difficulty, "What did you just say?" Oliver was dead. How could Oliver possibly be dead? I was struck like by lightning, and my heart ached incessantly. I'd rather believe that Oliver didn't want me any more than believe that something had happened to him. I was in a daze, but my mom didn't bother to care about my emotions. She muttered to herself, "Oliver was a real handful. I've dealt with him countless times, and I never got the upper hand even once. Fortunately, you showed up. Ever since he met you, Oliver has been distracted, not caring about the Hua family's business at all. As a result, my people found an opportunity and caught one of his business partners. To ensure the business could go on as usual, Oliver risked his life and went to the U.S. alone to rescue that person. Sadly, he was just a bit off. Not only did he fail to save that person, but he also lost his own life there. I listened in a daze. My body was still alive, but my mind was in a blur because of what my mom said. Oliver is dead? Because of me? How could that be? I didn't want to accept the truth, but what my mom said was so logical that I couldn't find any flaws. I didn't want to believe it, but I had to. Just then, my mom walked towards me again. "Come with me." My mom reached out her hand and said coldly, "Stand by my side now, and I can still let you live a good life." I remained silent, and when my mom got closer to me, I reached out and slapped her hand away. This was the first time I defied my mom's orders. Seeing me like this, my mom's eyes showed surprise. Then she withdrew her hand and sneered, "Do you think I'm eager for you to come with me? If it weren't for Oliver transferring all of the Hua family's shares to you, I wouldn't have stooped so low to come looking for you." The more I listened, the more unbelievable it seemed. Oliver left all the shares to me? When did this happen? I looked stunned. Suddenly, I remembered a scene from a year ago. It was a month before Oliver left the island. He suddenly found me and handed me a pure white contract, and simply told me to sign it. I asked him what the signature was for, but Oliver didn't answer me. If I didn't sign, he'd find ways to torment me until I was exhausted. I had no choice but to sign, but I never knew what that blank contract was for. Now that I think about it, it should have been a share transfer document. Oliver prepared everything for me without me knowing anything, and I, this coward, couldn't even admit my own feelings. When I was in a daze, my mom across from me spoke again. She wasn't exactly known for her good temper. Having waited for so long, she was starting to get impatient. Playing with her bright red fingernails, she said, "I've checked before coming. Besides the servants who come to clean once a week, there's only a cook left on this island. Matthew, you can't escape. Rather than making a scene and ruining our mother-son relationship, you'd better transfer the shares to me obediently. After all, we're family, right?" Having said that, my mom clapped her hands. As the sound faded, dozens of mercenaries with guns appeared in front of me. My mom looked at me, her red lips moving as she tempted, "Matthew, stop struggling. You can't escape." I stepped back, my face pale, but on this island with no signal, I couldn't even manage to run away. When I was cornered, suddenly, I heard the sound of a bullet being chambered. Someone stood in front of me. "Don't hurt him," the person said coldly. A tall figure blocked me. I looked up in shock, but all I saw was a blur. It was the cook who took care of me. Come to think of it, I'd been on the same island as the cook for 2 years, yet I could never quite remember his appearance, because his looks were really strange. His features were regular, not ugly, but just ordinary. The next second after seeing the cook, I forget what he looked like. I didn't expect such a stranger to step forward and protect me at this critical moment. Pulling myself together, I moved my lips. I had intended to tell him that he didn't have to go to such lengths for a stranger like me. But my mom spoke up first, sneering. "Oh, the master is already dead. Are you still going to fight to the death for your master? You dog." The cook's expression remained unchanged, but after my mom finished speaking, he lowered his gun. I wasn't surprised. To him, I was just a stranger. I had no right to expect someone to risk their life for me. Just when I thought the cook was going to give up the struggle and hand me over to my mom, suddenly, a familiar voice rang out by my ear. "Dead? Auntie, have you taken too much of that banned drug and fried your brain? Aren't I alive and well?" I looked up in shock. The person opposite still had the cook's ordinary face, yet it was Oliver's voice that came out. My mom was equally stunned. Before she could figure out what was going on, Oliver raised his hand and indifferently fired a shot into the sky. Bang! The next second after the gunshot, dozens of military planes descended from the sky. Soldiers in bulletproof vests descended along the ladders and easily subdued my mom and the group of mercenaries behind her. Until she was captured, my mom still looked clueless. Her wrists were cuffed with silver handcuffs. Only then did my mom come to her senses. As she was being pushed out, she desperately turned her head and stared fixedly at the back, saying, "You're not dead? You actually aren't dead? You lied to me." My mom was almost deranged. As she was being pushed onto the helicopter, she still couldn't stop ranting at Oliver. At this moment, Oliver raised his hand close to his jaw. He tore off the plain mask on his face, revealing that cold and handsome visage. "How could I possibly be dead?" As the words fell, I felt a warmth on my side face. Oliver put his arm around me and, without any hesitation, kissed me on the side face right in front of my mom. I haven't won over the person I like yet, and I haven't heard the person I like say they like me. So even if I really died, I'd crawl back from hell to see my beloved. Oliver's sincere and straightforward confession and that blatant kiss made me blush. It was a long time later, until my mom was taken away and all the planes had left. Then I reached out and grabbed Oliver, frowning as I asked, "What on earth is going on? What happened today was just too chaotic." My mom went crazy and then got better. Oliver was dead and then came back to life. And there were a bunch of mercenaries and a bunch of soldiers who came by helicopter. Besides, the cook was Oliver. Oliver had been by my side for so long, and I never even noticed. So much information filled my mind that I couldn't even calm down. Fortunately, Oliver seemed to have expected this. He was calming me down while telling me the whole story. Quite a few things did happen in the 10 years after I left. The first part of the story was exactly as my mom had told me. Samuel died, and Oliver and my mom started fighting over the family fortune. My mom, having crossed the legal line, fled abroad in disgrace and continued to be a lawbreaker there. But there was one thing she didn't mention. My mom's business had grown so big that she extended her reach into Country Z, which alerted the local police. The police had been trying to arrest her, but after being caught in the country, my mom learned her lesson. From then on, she only sent her subordinates to do things and never showed up in person. The police were helpless. In the end, it was Oliver who came up with a solution. He used his own death as bait to deceive my mom and, taking advantage of her greed, lured her back to claim her shares. As he finished speaking, couldn't help but frown. "So you got close to me just to use me?" "No," Oliver confessed earnestly. "I just missed you." According to Oliver, in the first 2 years after Samuel's death, the Hua family was in utter chaos. Besides my mom, many other direct and collateral members of the Hua family came to compete with Oliver for the family fortune. There are no morals in business. Not only Oliver, but even his subordinates were often targeted for assassination by hired killers during the fight for the fortune. Oliver took my hand. Oliver rubbed against me and hugged me whole in his arms like a big dog. He whispered, "Matthew, I really missed you," but he was also afraid that the person he loved would get hurt because of him. So he had been suppressing his feelings. It was not until 10 years later, when he was sure everything was ready and safe, that he cautiously approached the one he loved. Even later, when he had to fake his death and disappear from other sight to cooperate with the police mission, he still put on a mask, disguised his identity, and guarded the one he loved. I listened quietly as Oliver poured out his heart. After Oliver finished, I finally looked up and, looking at him seriously for once, asked, "Don't you blame me?" Oliver countered, "Why would I?" I pursed my lips, my mood complicated, but in the end, I still confessed, "I lied to you. I don't like you. I don't care about you." I always knew why Oliver depended on me. It started with a conspiracy, with a lie. I deceived the innocent young master. With a carefully arranged scam, I won Oliver's true heart. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to continue. "Actually, that day at the ski resort, I deliberately led you astray and made you get lost." After saying that, I fell silent, just as I was preparing myself to face Oliver's disappointed questioning. Oliver suddenly said, "I know." I was stunned. The next second, Oliver continued, "You took me outside the ski resort that day. You originally planned to make me get lost. And then when I was on the verge of starving, you'd take out food and save my life, right? But you didn't expect we'd encounter a snowstorm, and you didn't think we'd actually get trapped in a cave. Yet, when the cave was about to collapse and it was highly likely only one of us could survive, you chose to save me. Matthew, you love me too, even though you don't admit it. I know, that's enough." I was completely stunned. I never expected that the secret I'd hidden for years would be known by Oliver. Actually, I wasn't just lying to Oliver. I was lying to myself too. Having grown up beside my mom, being taught self-interest, I'm essentially a selfish person. I never thought of sacrificing my life to pave the way for my mom. So at first, I didn't plan to cause an avalanche. I just took Oliver outside the safe area of the ski resort, wanting to make him get lost. Then, when we were running out of food and ammunition, I gave the last bit of food to Oliver to gain a bit of his favor. But man proposes, God disposes. On the way back, the snow was falling heavier and heavier, and eventually, I also gradually lost my sense of direction. We really got lost. That day, when I was huddled with Oliver in the cave, I thought a lot. I thought about monopolizing the food, about abandoning Oliver. But I never thought that I'd instinctively save Oliver right before the cave collapsed. I like Oliver, but even I can't believe this. No one has ever loved me, and I don't have the ability to love either. So, after recovering from a serious illness, I started brainwashing and deceiving myself. I kept telling myself that I didn't like Oliver. Everything I've done from beginning to end was just to use Oliver to secure a better future for myself. But I never expected that even I couldn't see through my own heart, yet Oliver could. After a long while, I looked up. The doubts and unease that had been weighing on my heart before dissipated, and I looked at Oliver and asked, "Do you really like me?" Oliver didn't answer. He just took my hand and put a custom-made diamond ring on my finger. "Let's get married, Matthew. Time will prove to you how much I love you." Extra story. I'm Oliver. In the eyes of outsiders, I'm a young master born with a silver spoon in my mouth. My parents dote on me, and I never have to worry about food and clothing. But that's not the case, because I was precocious by nature. I've known since I was a child that my parents were different from others. My father didn't love my mother. He was with my mother just because of a business marriage driven by interests. But my mother loved my father. She tried her best to be a qualified wife and a good mother, hoping to win my father's favor. But Mom failed, and the cost of her failure was that she ended up dead. Outsiders all thought it was that woman who took my mother's place that killed her. But only I knew that wasn't the case. The one who really killed my mom was actually my dad. My dad coveted the power of my mom's family, and although Mom was head over heels in love, she didn't want to involve her parents. So my dad killed her, and after Mom died, taking advantage of my grandparents' grief over losing their beloved daughter. He got several big deals from them. My dad didn't love me either. That man seemed gentle, but in fact, he was shrewd and selfish. As I grew up, he was afraid I'd seize power, so he started to be wary of me. The day I met Matthew was my 17th birthday. No one congratulated me. In others' eyes, I, the young master of the Hua family, was actually a poor soul whose birthday no one cared about. I was in a really bad mood that day. I knew that the stepson my stepmom brought was also a poor kid with no one to love him, but I still said some mean things. After that, I went back to my room. I wanted to close the door and have some peace, but someone knocked on it just before 12 o'clock. Who is it? I pushed the door open impatiently, but there stood a teenage boy about my age, holding a small cream cake in his hand. He murmured softly, "Happy birthday." In the faint glow of the candlelight, the boy's eyes shone brightly. I couldn't help but feel a sudden flutter in my heart. However, the next day, I found out that the boy's approach was nothing but a deliberate ploy by my stepmother. I felt betrayed, and then I embarked on a childish prank spree that lasted for half a year. As the nominal heir of the Hua family, even if I didn't want to know, there were always people scrambling to tattle to me, hoping to get some benefits in return. I always knew what Matthew was up to. He hoped I'd get lost, and then he could save me when I was on the verge of starving, so as to win my favor. How ridiculous. Ever since my mother died, the nanny's daughter, the gardener's son, countless people had tried to curry my favor with small kindnesses. I had seen through this kind of trick long ago, yet on that day, I somehow followed him anyway. I left marks, but still got lost. As the snowflakes swirled down, I remembered the night my mother died. It was also winter then. My mother's car crashed unexpectedly, and before she died, she managed to push me out desperately. As the car exploded, snow began to fall on the ground. That day was like today. The snow was so heavy that nothing could be seen clearly. I felt tired. Leaning against Matthew, I asked, "Are we going to die?" Matthew pursed his lips and said, "No." The young man's tone was firm, but I thought he was lying to me. After all, Matthew didn't love me. I had known that for a long time. He got close to me just to pave the way for his mother, and I was just a stepping stone. But what I didn't expect was that I really didn't get into trouble. At the moment the cave collapsed, Matthew saved me all by himself. It was not until that moment that I was sure there really was someone in this world who loved me so much that they would risk their life. Although Matthew always refused to admit it, I knew he cared about me more than himself. I had once wanted to be with Matthew all the time, but my dad was a real jerk. He was attracted by Matthew's looks and wanted to give Matthew to someone else as a plaything. I didn't want anything to happen to Matthew, but I couldn't stop it myself, or my dad would get suspicious. So, I secretly gave my dad an aphrodisiac, making him and my stepmom have a wild time every night. Eventually, she got pregnant with a second child. I knew my stepmom was greedy and eyed the Hua family's fortune, so I exploited her greed and made her spend money to send Matthew away. Matthew was safe, but I still didn't dare to go see Matthew, because I was afraid he'd get hurt, afraid he'd be dragged into the power struggle. For 10 years, I lived on nothing but my longing for him. After seeing off my dad, my stepmom, and getting rid of all the threats, I finally got married to the one I loved in Country Y. The moment the ring was put on, I held my lover's hand and placed a kiss on it. We're like mayflies in the rainy night, clinging to each other tightly for warmth, until we die.